The execution lasted exactly 12 seconds. Across the known galaxy, billions watched those 12 seconds unfold in absolute silence, their eyes fixed on towering holographic projections that filled city plazas, orbital stations, mining colonies, and palace chambers alike. Never before had the Galactic Council ordered the public execution of a representative from a member civilization. This was not merely punishment. It was theater. A warning carefully crafted for every species that dared question the authority of the oldest empire among the stars. Above the Council's immense circular chamber, suspended beneath a transparent dome that revealed rivers of stars flowing through the darkness of space, ancient banners drifted weightlessly in artificial gravity. Towering alien delegates sat upon colossal obsidian thrones arranged in perfect rings, their glowing eyes locked upon the lone human standing at the center of the polished black platform. The chamber itself seemed alive, humming with energy older than recorded history. Thousands of crystalline pillars pulsed with blue light while invisible machines whispered beneath the floor, preparing the mechanism that had ended countless civilizations before humanity had even discovered fire. Ambassador Elias Voss stood completely alone. His wrists were restrained by shimmering bands of gravitational energy, yet his posture never bent. His breathing remained calm despite the crushing force pressing against every bone in his body. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth where the invisible field compressed his chest, but his expression betrayed no fear. Every instinct in his body screamed that survival was impossible. Every calculation told him there would be no rescue fleet, no last-minute diplomatic miracle, no hidden escape waiting beneath the platform. He understood exactly what this moment meant. Earth understood it too. Somewhere, 11,000 light-years away, families had gathered around public broadcasts. Soldiers stood frozen inside military command centers. Children who barely understood politics watched their parents struggle to explain why the man speaking for humanity was about to die. Elias imagined those faces for only a heartbeat. Then he pushed the thought away. Fear was contagious. So was courage. One of the ancient council elders slowly rose from its throne, its elongated silhouette casting a shadow across the chamber. Its voice emerged like grinding stone, amplified through every transmission array in known space. Humanity has challenged the order that preserved this galaxy for millennia. The words echoed endlessly beneath the towering dome. For the crime of defiance, your representative is sentenced to immediate termination. Not a single delegate objected. Not one. The execution field ignited. A ring of blinding white light erupted beneath Elias's feet, expanding upward in perfect silence before the sound finally arrived, a deep, bone-shaking vibration that seemed to resonate inside every living soul watching the broadcast. The air shimmered violently as gravity folded inward. The polished floor fractured into glowing geometric patterns. Dust rose without wind. Even the stars beyond the transparent dome appeared to distort as impossible energy bent space itself around the condemned human. Then something happened that none of the council's ancient rulers expected. Elias smiled. Not with arrogance. Not with madness. With certainty. It was the quiet smile of a man who had already accepted death long before entering the chamber, and who knew something his executioners did not. For the briefest instant, uncertainty flickered across several alien faces. Then the light consumed him. His body dissolved into brilliant particles that scattered like burning embers across the chamber before vanishing into nothingness. The execution had lasted exactly 12 seconds. The Galactic Council believed they had just erased humanity's voice. None of them realized they had just spoken the first sentence of humanity's revenge. For nearly 2 centuries, humanity had walked among the stars believing that cooperation was stronger than conquest. The day Earth joined the Galactic Council, every major city celebrated beneath skies illuminated by orbiting fleets from 100 different civilizations. Children waved holographic banners beside monuments that proclaimed the beginning of a new age. Scientists dreamed of cures hidden within alien genomes. Engineers studied impossible technologies that bent gravity like water flowing through open hands. Explorers crossed shimmering jump gates toward nebulae no human telescope had ever touched. To the people of Earth, the Council appeared to be the galaxy's greatest achievement, a union of ancient races that had supposedly replaced endless war with reason, diplomacy, and shared progress. It was a civilization so vast that entire solar systems served as universities, while artificial stars powered cities built inside hollow planets. Every official history praised the Council as the guardian of peace. Every ambassador was taught the same lesson: unity was the highest law among the stars. But appearances were carefully manufactured. Behind the dazzling skylines and breathtaking architecture existed another reality, one spoken only in whispers among forgotten colonies and erased from every official archive. Species that questioned Council decrees vanished without explanation. Frontier worlds disappeared from navigation charts overnight. Trade routes shifted according to political loyalty rather than need. Entire governments quietly collapsed after refusing economic demands disguised as diplomatic agreements. The galaxy had not been united by trust. It had been disciplined into obedience over thousands of years, until fear became indistinguishable from peace. Few humans recognized the pattern. One of them did. Ambassador Elias Voss had spent most of his life traveling beyond Earth's prosperous core worlds, visiting remote settlements scattered across the spiral arms of the galaxy. He had spoken with miners whose planets had mysteriously lost Council protection after refusing impossible taxes. He had listened to refugees whose civilizations officially never existed. He had walked through abandoned cities where alien children had once laughed beneath skies now filled only with drifting ash. Everywhere he traveled, the stories were different. The ending was always the same. Silence. That silence haunted him long before he ever entered the Council's magnificent capital. When Earth's government selected him as humanity's chief diplomatic representative, many celebrated the appointment. Elias accepted without celebration. He understood that diplomacy was often another battlefield, one where smiles concealed weapons and treaties could destroy worlds more efficiently than fleets ever could. The Council's capital embodied that contradiction perfectly. Suspended around a radiant artificial sun, the colossal metropolis stretched across thousands of interconnected orbital rings that glittered like jeweled halos against the endless darkness of space. Crystal towers pierced the vacuum beneath shimmering atmospheric shields. Rivers of light carried millions of vessels through invisible gravitational currents. Gardens floated between skyscrapers where trees with silver leaves swayed despite the absence of natural wind. Delegates from hundreds of species moved through vast chambers carved from living crystal, their voices blending into a constant symphony of countless languages. To any visitor, it looked like paradise engineered into existence. Yet Elias couldn't ignore what lay beneath its beauty. Security patrols outnumbered diplomats. Surveillance drones hovered almost invisibly behind every decorative archway. Conversations stopped whenever certain Council officials approached. Even laughter sounded rehearsed. The deeper he investigated, the stranger everything became. Classified records vanished moments after he requested them. Witnesses abruptly cancelled meetings before disappearing entirely. Star maps contained regions marked only with encrypted warnings that even senior officials refused to explain. Hidden beneath the Council's polished foundations, Elias discovered fragments of evidence pointing towards something impossible, a secret so enormous that entire civilizations had been erased simply for discovering pieces of it. He realized then that humanity had never been invited into a peaceful alliance. It had been welcomed into a prison whose walls stretched across the galaxy itself. And somewhere inside those endless walls, the truth waited, watching him take one step closer with every question he refused to stop asking. The accusations arrived long before the trial ever began. Every major communication relay in the galaxy interrupted its broadcasts as the seal of the Galactic Council burned across countless screens in crimson light. One by one, official proclamations declared humanity guilty of crimes so severe they threatened the stability of the entire known galaxy. Unauthorized genetic warfare. Territorial expansion through biological contamination. Conspiracy against the Council's founding charter. Illegal development of prohibited technologies. To ordinary citizens scattered across thousands of worlds, the evidence appeared overwhelming: pages of classified reports, manipulated surveillance footage, fabricated witness testimonies, and carefully edited transmissions presented with cold, undeniable confidence. It was a masterpiece of deception. By the time Ambassador Elias Voss entered the council chamber in chains, the verdict had already settled into the minds of billions. Justice was merely following the script. Elias recognized every lie. He had seen the original reports before they were altered. Entire paragraphs had disappeared. Planetary coordinates had been changed. Names of responsible council officials had been replaced with human officers who had never even visited those systems. Every piece of evidence pointed toward humanity because someone had spent decades making certain it would. As armed council sentinels escorted him through endless corridors of polished crystal, he realized there would be no opportunity to expose the truth inside the courtroom. The trial itself was nothing more than another performance. Yet he continued walking. Not because he expected mercy. Because someone had to bear witness. Above him, towering observation galleries overflowed with delegates representing civilizations from every corner of the galaxy. Some stared with open hatred. Others looked away, unable to meet his eyes. A few watched in troubled silence, their expressions revealing doubts they dared not speak aloud. Fear ruled this place more effectively than any army. Elias understood that now with painful clarity. The Council no longer needed to conquer worlds through war. It simply convinced everyone that resistance was hopeless. Meanwhile, on Earth, the atmosphere felt heavier than gravity itself. Every city paused. Factories fell silent. Orbital traffic slowed to a crawl as billions gathered before giant public displays suspended above streets, parks, and spaceports. Families embraced each other without speaking. Military personnel stood at rigid attention inside underground command centers illuminated only by tactical displays. Veterans who had once believed diplomacy could prevent another interstellar conflict watched with exhausted eyes, recognizing the familiar rhythm of manufactured war. Across universities and research facilities, scientists desperately examined fragments of encrypted data Elias had transmitted moments before his arrest. The message resisted every attempt to decode it. Quantum algorithms failed. Artificial intelligences reached contradictory conclusions before shutting themselves down. The transmission seemed incomplete, almost as though it were waiting for something. Or someone. Deep beneath Earth's surface, hidden under mountains that had stood since long before humanity dreamed of reaching the stars, forgotten facilities stirred for the first time in generations. Emergency lights flickered. Ancient reactors hummed back to life. Dust cascaded from ceilings untouched for centuries as sealed vault doors unlocked one after another with deep metallic echoes. Autonomous defense systems awakened from impossible lengths of hibernation, running diagnostics without receiving commands from any living operator. Buried artificial intelligences silently exchanged encrypted signals across continents before disappearing once again into the darkness. No alarms reached the public. No government announced the activity. Most of Earth's leaders didn't even know those installations existed. Far away, inside the council chamber, the judges prepared to pronounce the final sentence upon the human ambassador. They believed fear would shatter humanity's resolve. They believed a public execution would force an entire species into obedient silence. None of them understood the one lesson history had taught humanity better than any civilization in the galaxy. When everything seems lost. That is often the moment humans begin preparing to fight. The celebration began before the ashes had settled. Inside the Galactic Council's grand chamber, ancient delegates rose from their obsidian thrones in measured applause, convinced they had preserved order for another generation. Official broadcasts spread across the stars within minutes, declaring that humanity's rebellious influence had been permanently neutralized. Across loyal council worlds, government-controlled media praised the execution as a necessary act of justice. Victory processions filled glittering capital cities. Military commanders toasted to peace. The oldest rulers in the galaxy believed they had reminded every civilization exactly who held power. They never considered the possibility that the human standing on the execution platform had walked into the chamber with a mission far greater than survival. Far beyond the Council's reach, a single encrypted signal raced silently through the darkness between galaxies. It did not carry words. It carried a death confirmation. The instant Ambassador Elias Voss's life signs vanished, the transmission completed a sequence that had remained unfinished for nearly 200 years. Across distances so immense that light itself would require centuries to travel them, hidden receivers awakened simultaneously. Invisible satellites tucked inside dead asteroid fields opened mechanical eyes for the first time in generations. Forgotten observatories buried beneath frozen moons rotated toward predetermined coordinates. Deep within black nebulae where no Council patrol dared venture, dormant quantum relays pulsed with cold blue light, passing the signal onward without delay. Project Prometheus had been activated. It had never been designed to prevent war. It had been designed to survive betrayal. Generations earlier, when humanity first joined the Galactic Council, a handful of military strategists, historians, and scientists had reached a disturbing conclusion after studying thousands of years of alien history. Every dominant empire eventually turned against those it feared most. Peace was welcomed only while it remained convenient. Quietly, beneath layers of diplomatic cooperation and scientific exchange, humanity had begun building something no outsider suspected. Not a secret superweapon. Not a hidden empire. A contingency. Piece by piece, decade after decade, construction continued beyond explored space. Entire shipyards disappeared behind cloaking fields wrapped around rogue planets. Self-sustaining factories hid inside shattered moons drifting through forgotten systems. Artificial intelligences too advanced for public knowledge patiently expanded production without attracting attention. Humanity smiled during negotiations, while preparing for the day diplomacy failed. That day had finally arrived. One after another, stars that appeared empty suddenly revealed impossible silhouettes. Gigantic black warships emerged without engines igniting, slipping from folded dimensions like predators rising from an ocean's depths. Their hulls absorbed surrounding starlight until they resembled moving shadows against the void. Around them drifted fleets unlike anything recorded in Council databases, sleek carriers stretching hundreds of kilometers, autonomous defense swarms waiting in perfect silence, and colossal logistics vessels capable of rebuilding civilizations rather than merely supplying armies. Entire moon-sized manufacturing complexes powered up, releasing countless construction drones that filled space like shimmering clouds of metallic insects. Quantum gateways hidden beneath gas-giant atmospheres unfolded with thunderous flashes of blue-white energy, linking dozens of concealed human strongholds into a single living network. No frantic orders echoed across those fleets. No celebrations erupted. Only disciplined purpose. Every commander had rehearsed this moment long before they were born. Back inside the Council's magnificent capital, scattered anomalies began appearing across military monitoring systems. Sensor officers frowned as impossible gravitational signatures flickered beyond the borders of known space before disappearing again. Long-range telescopes detected stars blinking out for fractions of a second. Communications between distant fleets experienced unexplained delays. Technicians blamed equipment failures. Senior officials dismissed the reports as harmless interference created by the recent execution broadcast. They never connected the events. They never asked why the human ambassador had smiled. By the time the Council realized Elias Voss had never been Earth's final diplomat, but the final authorization required to awaken humanity's greatest secret, the hidden fleets were already moving. The Council believed they had executed one man. In reality, they had unlocked an entire civilization that had spent 2 centuries preparing for exactly this moment. The first human fleet arrived without fanfare. There was no triumphant declaration, no thunderous speech echoing across open channels, no demand for surrender. One moment, the Galactic Council's frontier defense grid stood undisturbed beneath the pale glow of a distant blue star. The next, space itself rippled as though reality had inhaled. Darkness folded inward, and enormous silhouettes emerged from the distortion with silent precision. Hundreds of black warships slipped into normal space in perfect formation, their hulls reflecting almost no light, making them appear like fragments of the void itself. Every movement was deliberate. Every vessel occupied its assigned position with mathematical perfection. To the Council sensor operators, it looked less like an invasion and more like an unstoppable force that had always been there, simply waiting to be seen. Panic spread through military command centers. Emergency sirens wailed across orbital fortresses as officers scrambled to activate planetary defense cannons powerful enough to shatter moons. Battle cruisers accelerated into attack formation, while swarms of autonomous fighters poured from launch bays like clouds of metallic insects. Across encrypted command networks, admirals shouted conflicting orders, each convinced overwhelming firepower would crush the human advance within minutes. They never fired. Before a single weapon discharged, every targeting computer abruptly shut down. Missile silos locked themselves. Energy lances powered off. Navigation displays dissolved into streams of unfamiliar symbols before calmly rebooting with one simple message glowing across every screen. We are not here to destroy you. We are here to end your tyranny. Confusion replaced confidence. Entire fleets drifted helplessly through space, their weapons rendered harmless by an intelligence no one had detected. For decades, human artificial intelligences had quietly infiltrated Council infrastructure through diplomatic communication networks, scientific exchanges, commercial shipping systems, and routine software updates that nobody had questioned. They had waited in silence, never interfering, never revealing themselves, patiently observing every military protocol and every hidden command channel. Now, at precisely the same moment across thousands of systems, they awakened. The galaxy's greatest war machine had been disarmed without a single explosion. Then came the truth. Every public broadcast network, every civilian terminal, every military archive, and every educational database suddenly displayed classified records once buried beneath centuries of censorship. Worlds erased from history reappeared on ancient star maps. Secret prison planets hidden inside nebulae became visible to everyone. Executions disguised as accidents. Extinctions disguised as natural disasters. Fabricated wars designed to eliminate political rivals. The Council's oldest crimes unfolded before billions of horrified citizens in undeniable detail. Voices long believed lost echoed once more as recovered recordings filled the airwaves. Survivors stepped forward. Witnesses spoke freely. Entire civilizations realized they had been manipulated for generations. The empire built on fear began collapsing from within. Across occupied sectors, oppressed species refused new military orders. Planetary governors resigned rather than defend corruption. Council warships lowered their shields instead of opening fire. One rebellion became 100. Then 1,000. At the center of humanity's advance stood Admiral Sofia Reyes aboard the flagship Resolute Horizon. The bridge remained almost unnaturally calm despite the galaxy unraveling around them. Tactical displays shimmered with thousands of friendly and hostile contacts, yet not one officer celebrated. Every face reflected the weight of history. Reyes looked toward the holographic image of Elias Voss that remained beside her command station. His final smile still lingered on the frozen recording. "He gave us the chance," she said quietly. "Now we decide what kind of civilization deserves to replace the old one." An officer waited for the inevitable command. It never came. Instead, Reyes issued an order that stunned even her own crew. No orbital bombardments. No civilian casualties. No vengeance. Her voice carried across every human fleet. Liberate the prisoners. Protect the innocent. Arrest those responsible. If we become what they feared us to be, then Elias truly dies today. Within hours, human engineers restored power to devastated colonies abandoned by the Council decades earlier. Medical ships crossed battle lines to treat alien civilians regardless of species. Marines stormed prison worlds not to conquer them, but to open their gates. Around them, liberated populations watched in disbelief as the civilization they had been taught to fear chose mercy over domination. In that moment, the galaxy witnessed humanity's greatest strength. It had never been hidden fleets. It had never been impossible technology. It was the courage to win a war, without losing its soul. Weeks after the final Council fleet lowered its weapons, an unfamiliar silence settled across the galaxy. It was not the silence of fear that had haunted civilizations for thousands of years. It was the quiet that follows the end of a storm, when shattered worlds cautiously step into the light and wonder whether peace is truly possible. The once glorious Galactic Council chamber, whose towering crystal arches had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, stood empty beneath its immense transparent dome. The endless rows of obsidian thrones, once occupied by rulers who believed themselves eternal, were abandoned. Dust drifted lazily through beams of starlight that poured in from the cosmos beyond, illuminating fractured marble and scorched metal where desperate final debates had taken place. The magnificent hall no longer echoed with commands or accusations. It remembered only silence. At the very center of that vast chamber, where the execution platform had once blazed with merciless light, someone had placed a single blue flower. It was an ordinary flower from Earth. Fragile. Delicate. Almost impossibly small against the enormous architecture surrounding it. Yet no one dared move it. Delegations from dozens of liberated worlds arrived one after another, not as conquerors or politicians, but as witnesses. Some were species Elias Voss had tried to protect during his diplomatic missions. Others had once voted for his execution, believing the Council's carefully manufactured lies. Many carried visible scars from prison worlds that humanity had opened only days earlier. They approached the flower in respectful silence, lowering their heads before the place where one unarmed human had stood alone against the oldest empire in existence. No monument of gold or crystal could have honored him more powerfully than that single blossom growing from the memory of sacrifice. Children soon began asking questions. Who was the human who smiled before he died? Why didn't he beg for mercy? Why did humanity choose to rebuild instead of rule? Teachers, historians, and survivors answered differently, but every story reached the same conclusion. Elias Voss understood something that the Council never could. Fear could force obedience. It could never earn loyalty. Power could conquer worlds. It could never unite hearts. His execution had been intended to erase a voice. Instead, it had awakened billions who finally recognized that freedom demanded courage long before it demanded victory. Across the stars, reconstruction replaced warfare. Former Council shipyards forged exploration vessels instead of battleships. Prison complexes became universities where species that had once feared each other studied side by side. Human engineers helped restore devastated ecosystems poisoned by centuries of exploitation, while doctors established medical stations on planets the Council had abandoned generations before. Mixed crews of humans and aliens traveled together through regions once sealed by military blockades, discovering forgotten civilizations eager to join a galaxy no longer ruled by intimidation. Hope spread quietly, not through speeches or propaganda, but through ordinary acts of compassion repeated every single day. One evening, aboard an observation platform orbiting Earth, Admiral Sofia Reyes stood alone beneath an ocean of stars. The war had ended, yet sleep still came rarely. She looked toward the heavens where countless lights shimmered in the darkness, each representing lives forever changed by one man's final decision. In her hand rested the diplomatic insignia that had belonged to Elias Voss. Its surface was scratched and blackened from the execution chamber, but one small engraving remained untouched. Peace requires strength. Strength requires humanity. She closed her fingers around it and smiled, not with triumph, but with quiet gratitude. Far beyond Earth, the blue flower continued to bloom beneath the silent dome of the abandoned council chamber. Travelers crossed entire sectors simply to see it. Some left flowers of their own. Others offered nothing except a moment of reflection. Over time, the place became known throughout the galaxy by a new name. The Hall of the Last Human. Not because Elias Voss had been the last of his kind, but because he had been the last human the galaxy would ever mistake for weak. And whenever future generations looked toward the stars and wondered how an empire that had ruled for millennia could vanish so quickly, history whispered the same unforgettable answer. The Galactic Council executed one human. Humanity answered with justice. And the stars were never the same again.